Now, what are your thoughts about RFK has come on the stage running for office? Some people say that he's going to be a sheep herder. He's going to take the independent votes and put them into the Democrats and in the end endorse Biden. But there's something interesting going on. He has said that he would pardon Julian Assange, that he would have those charges dropped, the extradition, and he would also do that for Edward Snowden. And now Caroline Kennedy is apparently in talks with Australian officials about Julian Assange on behalf of the Biden administration. And there might be like this little tit for tat between Biden and RFK about like who lets Julian Assange go first, which would benefit Julian Assange, right? And humanity in general. What are your thoughts about RFK's run and the criticism of him being basically a sheep herder and all of that regarding those two cases?
I'm proud to say that I consider Bob Kennedy to be a friend. Mm-hmm. And he told me about 2 weeks before he announced his candidacy that he intended to publish those tweets about pardoning Julian, Ed, Jeffrey Sterling, reality winner, Daniel Hale, Chelsea Manning, and me. And I never brought it up. And he wasn't in touch with any of the other whistleblowers. He did it because he believes in it, right? He went public because he believes that's the right thing to do. I think the world of Bob Kennedy. I disagree with him on some issues. I think, it's just not possible to agree with a political figure on every single issue. But he's a truly good-hearted man. He wants only what's best for the country. Mm-hmm. And I think that he's willing to forge his own path. Now, with that said, I told him quite pointedly the last time I talked to him that the polls show that he is more popular among right-leaning independents than he is among Democrats. Now, his poll numbers in the Democratic primary so far are strong. 19% and 21% against an incumbent president. Those are strong numbers right there.
Strong enough for them not to want to have a primary. Yeah. Debate.
Strong enough for them to not want to have a primary or debates. But he's adamant that he will not run as an independent. He just simply won't do it. So I think that your scenario is probably correct. I think that he intends to get his ideas out there, to get his policy proposals out there, and in the end, he'll likely endorse Joe Biden. Now, one of the things that the people around him are hopeful of is a repeat of the 1968 election, where Eugene McCarthy, who was a senator from the Democratic Party's left wing, ran against Lyndon Johnson in the New Hampshire primary. And McCarthy got something like 32%. This was so shocking to Johnson, an incumbent president, that he immediately took himself out of the race. Now, Bob's polling numbers are strongest in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and California. And I think the people around him are hopeful that if he can put up serious numbers in those 5 states, that it's possible that he could push Joe Biden out of the race. I think that's what they're hoping for.
Well, let's see. Another thing about the CIA that he raised up, which I found interesting, and because you were part of the CIA for so long, he put it out there with no uncertain terms. Now, you and I have talked, so you know that I had volunteered for the RFK Memorial back in the past, and I'd known members of the Kennedy family. One of my good friends worked for Ted Kennedy, and Ted Kennedy was very adamant that they not talk about the assassination with his family. I mean, that the family publicly not talk about some of the theories around who really assassinated JFK. And Oliver Stone has done some incredible introspective documentaries on it. A recent one he just did. But what was startling was RFK tweeted out that the CIA was basically responsible, partly responsible, if not all responsible, for the assassination of JFK, and his father involved with that. And I think what really startled me was that the mainstream media just went silent. There was nothing about it. You only saw it on what you
Yes.
consider independent or Republican leaning. So what are your thoughts on that and what he said, is particularly with your experience in the CIA?
He believes that. And I'll tell you, I've come around to believe it as well. I think there's enough documentary evidence out there, maybe not to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, but the preponderance of the evidence is such that I think he's probably right. He told me a story once that was just chilling to me. It's stuck in my mind since he said it. He said that on November 22nd, 1963, his mom picked him up early from school, right? Picked him up at I think he said it was 2 o'clock. His uncle had just been assassinated an hour earlier.
Mm.
And when they got home, he lived in a very well-known house called Hickory Hill in McLean, Virginia,
Yes.
less than a half a mile from the CIA's headquarters. When he got home, he got out of the car and his father was standing in the driveway talking to John McCone, who was the director of the CIA, director of Central Intelligence at the time. Now, McCone was a very, very close friend of the Kennedy family. Just after John Kennedy named John McCone as the director of CIA, McCone's wife developed cancer and she died very quickly. And he was so distraught that the Kennedys were afraid he was going to harm himself. And so he had dinner with the Kennedys every single night. He would leave the CIA, he would go to Hickory Hill, he'd swim in the pool, and then they would all have dinner together. So Bob said that when he got out of the car, and he was 9 or 10 years old at the time, he walked past his father, who was deep in conversation with McCone, and he overheard his father say, "Tell me your people didn't do this." And McCone responded, "I don't know who did it." He didn't say, "Of course my people didn't do it."
Right.
He genuinely didn't know if the CIA did it. And I think Oliver Stone's conclusions are correct, although Oliver and I have gone back and forth over this a couple of times in not very nice language. But I think that it was elements of the CIA that did it. I would guarantee to you that this was not a policy where John McCone, who's the best friend of Robert Kennedy, said, "We need to kill the president." Or even James Angleton, "We need to kill the president." I don't believe that ever happened. But I believe that there were elements of the CIA known as rogue officers who later went on to even greater infamy, who were probably involved. And I think that a lot of it came from the residual effects of the Bay of Pigs invasion and the fact that John Kennedy had spoken about breaking up the CIA.
Right, abolishing it.